The sound of tires crunching over gravel snapped me out of my thoughts. I was standing in a room I rarely entered anymore, my husband's private study, holding a thin black folder that had no reason to exist. My heart started racing the moment I realized his car was already in the driveway. My name is Alina Hayes, and for most of my life, I believed loyalty was protection. I was wrong. Earlier that afternoon, Martin had called me in a panic. He'd forgotten an important folder at home and needed me to scan a few documents before a critical investor call. He told me exactly where it would be. Second drawer, left side. Black folder. I found it easily. What I found inside changed everything. It wasn't investor paperwork. It was a legal transfer agreement, dated just weeks earlier, reassigning a massive portion of Hayes Manufacturing, the company I helped finance decades ago, to a woman named Lena Morales. Not as a partner buy-in, not as compensation, as a gift. My hands shook as I turned the pages. Attached emails confirmed it wasn't a clerical error. Once everything's finalized, she won't even realize what she signed. Be patient. You'll get your share. She doesn't understand this stuff anymore. That was me. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I memorized everything. Then I saw the photos. Martin and Lena on a beach. Martin and Lena holding keys in front of a modern condo. Martin smiling the way he hadn't smiled at me in years. I heard his voice in my head, laughing at a family dinner not long ago. Don't ask Alina about business, he joked. She prefers gardening to spreadsheets. Everyone laughed. I laughed too. I shouldn't have. His footsteps echoed from the garage. I snapped photos of every page, returned everything exactly as I found it, and walked downstairs with the folder tucked neatly under my arm. Here you go, I said pleasantly, handing it to him. Didn't look inside. You know I don't follow business anymore. Relief flooded his face. That night, while he slept peacefully beside me, I stared at the ceiling and made a decision. If he thought I was obsolete, if he thought I was harmless, I would let him keep believing that, right up until it destroyed him. Rehook, but that folder wasn't the beginning of his betrayal. It was the final move in a plan that had been unfolding for years. Martin and I met when ambition still felt romantic. I was a numbers woman, trained, precise, cautious. He was charismatic, visionary, always chasing the next expansion. When we married, people said we balanced each other. For a long time, they were right. When my mother passed away, she left me a sizable inheritance. Martin pitched me an idea late one night at our kitchen table. We could build something real, he said. Something that lasts. I believed him. That money became the foundation of Hayes Manufacturing. I managed finances. He handled operations. For over a decade, we were equals. Then the language changed. You don't need to worry about this anymore. Things are more complex now. This is how modern companies operate. Eventually, he suggested stepping me out of leadership for appearances. Investors preferred a clean hierarchy, he said. I'd still own my shares, I'd still be protected. I signed. That was the day I began vanishing. At company events, I became Martin's wife instead of co-founder. Decisions happened without my knowledge. Financial discussions stopped entirely. When I asked questions, I was told not to stress myself. His family helped reinforce it. His sister once suggested I enjoy retirement early. His mother asked if I'd considered volunteering. Slowly, I started believing the lie too. Maybe I was out of touch. Maybe the world had passed me by. That belief was exactly what Martin needed. You can't steal from someone who's watching. You steal from someone who's been convinced they're irrelevant. Finding that folder snapped me awake. The woman I used to be, the one who built spreadsheets from memory, who read contracts line by line, she wasn't gone. She was waiting. And Martin had no idea he'd just woken her up. By morning, I wasn't just angry. I was preparing for war. The next morning, I dressed like someone I hadn't been in years. Tailored suit, pearl earrings, calm expression. Martin thought I was meeting friends for brunch. Instead, I drove straight to our company headquarters. The accounting manager, Samuel Price, looked stunned when he saw me. I need full financial records for the last 3 years, I told him. Everything. He hesitated until I reminded him who owned controlling interest. That night, alone in a hotel room, I followed the numbers. The truth was worse than I imagined. Lena Morales wasn't just a mistress. She'd been paid through the company as a consultant. Tens of thousands each month. luxury expenses disguised as operational costs. Then I found the shell company, then the property purchases, then the divorce paperwork, drafted, hidden, waiting. He wasn't planning to leave me empty-handed by accident. He was planning it meticulously. At 2 a.m., I stopped reading and started calling attorneys. By sunrise, I knew exactly what he'd done and exactly how much prison time it could cost him. By Monday morning, I wasn't shaking anymore. That scared me more than the anger. I sat in a quiet office across from a woman who didn't interrupt, didn't soften her words, and didn't underestimate me for a single second. Margaret Lowe, divorce attorney, financial litigator, professional destroyer of arrogant men. She reviewed the documents one by one, the transfer agreements, the shell company records, the payments disguised as consulting fees, the unsigned divorce petition hidden behind tax files. When she finally looked up, her expression was almost amused. "Your husband didn't just betray you," she said. "He committed a series of crimes and left a paper trail like he wanted to be caught." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "Can we stop him?" Margaret nodded. "Today." She explained the plan with surgical precision. Emergency filings, asset freezes, court orders, not tomorrow, not next week, immediately. "Once this goes through," she said, tapping the file, "he won't be able to move a dollar. Not personal funds, not company funds. Not whatever fantasy future he thinks he's building." "Will he know it was me?" I asked. "Oh, yes," she replied calmly, "and he'll panic." That afternoon, I went home and played my role perfectly. I cooked dinner. I laughed at his jokes. I listened while he talked about meetings and deadlines and long-term strategies. He kissed my forehead like I was furniture he still found useful. At 9:42 a.m. the next morning, the doorbell rang. Martin was in the shower. I opened the door to find a man holding a thick envelope. "Mrs. Hayes?" "Yes, you've been served." Minutes later, Martin came downstairs in a towel, confused, annoyed, until the server handed him his copy. I watched it happen in real time. The color drained from his face. His hands trembled as he read. "What is this?" he demanded, voice cracking. "Asset freeze? Fraud allegations? Eleanor, what did you do?" I met his eyes steadily. "I found the folder," I said, "all of it." Silence swallowed the room. "You went through my things?" he snapped, grasping for anger because fear was too honest. "You asked me to," I replied. "Remember?" He opened his mouth, closed it. "Tried again. This will ruin everything." I nodded. "Yes, for you." The server left. The house felt different, lighter somehow. Martin's phone began ringing, then ringing again, then again. I picked up my coffee and took a sip. "You underestimated me," I said quietly. "That was your mistake." And while he was still standing in shock, the second wave was already on its way. The first night after the accounts were frozen, Martin called me 11 times. I didn't answer a single one. By morning, the calls had turned into voicemails, long, rambling messages that swung wildly between anger, bargaining, and fear. He accused me of betrayal. He promised to fix everything. He cried. Then he threatened lawsuits. Then he cried again. Panic makes people sloppy. That afternoon, my attorney called. "He's trying to move money through secondary channels," Margaret said. "Old accounts he forgot existed. But the freeze caught those too." I closed my eyes and felt something close to relief. Good. The company reacted fast. Banks flagged irregularities. Compliance departments began asking questions no one had asked in years. Within 24 hours, an internal review was underway, triggered by the same evidence Martin assumed no one would ever see. But the real collapse started when someone else cracked. Her name was Isabel Cruz. She wasn't supposed to exist, at least not outside of expense reports and payroll spreadsheets. A consultant, a line item, nothing more. But once investigators started calling, she stopped being invisible. Margaret warned me before it happened. "She's young, she's scared, and she's realizing he set her up." The first contact came through her lawyer. Isabel wanted to cooperate. She didn't come to me for forgiveness. She came for survival. By Friday, federal auditors were involved. The IRS wasn't interested in excuses. They wanted timelines, documentation, intent. They wanted to know why company funds had paid for personal property, why income wasn't reported, why ownership transfers were hidden. They wanted names. Martin still believed he could talk his way out of it. He emailed Isabel at 2 in the morning using a company address, forgetting, again, that nothing inside that system belonged solely to him. We need to stay aligned. This only works if our story matches. She doesn't have proof of everything. Isabel forwarded the email directly to investigators. She also turned over texts, call logs, voice notes, documents he'd asked her to sign without explanation. Each one chipped away at the version of reality he'd been selling for years. By Sunday, the narrative had flipped. Martin wasn't a misunderstood executive caught in a marital dispute. He was a man who had methodically abused his authority, siphoned funds, and lied to everyone around him, including the person he thought was helping him escape. When Margaret called that evening, her tone was almost gentle. "They're expanding the investigation," she said. "This isn't just..." The morning after the verdict, I walked into the company headquarters through the front doors. Not as a guest, not as a spouse, as the owner. People noticed immediately. Conversations stalled. Heads turned. For years, I'd been a familiar background detail, pleasant, polite, easily overlooked. That version of me no longer existed. I called an emergency board meeting within the hour. When the room filled, I didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I'm assuming interim leadership effective immediately," I said evenly. "This company is entering a full financial and ethical reset." Some faces showed relief. Others showed fear. Both were appropriate. I laid out the findings of the forensic audit, years of unauthorized transfers, shell entities, misclassified expenses. I made it clear that cooperation would be remembered and silence would not. One board member attempted to object, citing tradition, procedure, optics. I cut him off. "Tradition protected misconduct," I said. "Procedure was weaponized. Optics no longer matter." Resignations followed quickly. The ones who stayed understood the new reality. That afternoon, I took the elevator to the executive floor. Martin's office. Everything was exactly as he'd left it. Half-finished coffee, framed photos that now felt absurd, paperwork scattered in quiet denial. I sat in his chair and didn't feel triumphant. I felt focused. Over the next 2 weeks, I worked longer hours than I had in years. I met with department heads, reviewed contracts, restructured oversight. I promoted people who had kept their heads down and done honest work while chaos grew above them. One of them was Samuel Price. I appointed him CFO. "You should have had this role years ago," I told him. He looked stunned. "I didn't think you even noticed." "I noticed everything," I replied. "I was just waiting." The market reacted cautiously at first. Stock dipped, analysts speculated, but transparency has weight. When clients saw decisive leadership and full cooperation with regulators, confidence began to return. So did mine. Late one evening, as I was preparing to leave, Samuel knocked on my door. "There's someone asking to see you," he said carefully. "She insists it's important." I didn't need to ask who it was. After everything, the trial, the exposure, the fallout, there was only one person left whose presence could still complicate the story. I straightened my jacket. "Send her in," I said, because the past wasn't done confronting me, and this time it stood on my doorstep. She stood in my doorway looking nothing like the woman I'd imagined. No confidence, no entitlement. Just exhaustion wrapped in careful posture. "I won't take much of your time," she said. "I just needed to say this in person." I gestured for her to sit. She didn't apologize first. She didn't ask for forgiveness. Instead, she told the truth, without embellishment, without excuses. She explained how she'd believed the marriage was already over, how she'd been shown selective truths, how she'd mistaken access for legitimacy. By the time she realized what was happening, fear had replaced ambition. "I made choices," she said quietly. "Bad ones, I'm paying for them." I believed her, not because she deserved absolution, but because she wasn't asking for it. When she finished, the room felt still. "I'm rebuilding," she added. "Slowly, honestly, I just wanted you to know that." I nodded. "That's all any of us can do," I said. She left without another word. That night, I stayed late at the office, standing by the windows overlooking the city. Lights flickered on and off in buildings that didn't know my story and didn't need to. For the first time in decades, my life felt quiet in a way that wasn't empty. The divorce finalized a month later. There were no arguments left to have, no assets left to dispute. What remained had always been mine, I'd just been convinced otherwise. The company stabilized. Trust returned. New leadership brought new energy. I hired women who'd been overlooked, underestimated, told their best years were behind them. They reminded me of myself. People still made assumptions. They still saw age before capability. Silence before strength. Patience before intelligence. I let them. Underestimation is a powerful advantage. One afternoon, Samuel stopped by my office with updated reports. Profits were up. Growth was steady. Clean. "You know," he said, smiling, "people are saying this is the strongest the company's ever been." I returned the smile. "It always was," I said. "It just needed honesty to breathe." When I went home that evening, the house no longer felt like a battlefield. It felt like a beginning. I poured a glass of wine and sat in the quiet, not replaying the past, not fearing the future. Just present, they had called me outdated, invisible, too old to understand. They were wrong. I understood perfectly. The most dangerous woman in the room is the one everyone stopped paying attention to.